Are you a escape room connoisseur?
They asked that, have you done any escape rooms? And I said no, but I've played a lot of Legend of Zelda.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Unlikely Story Podcast. We're your host, Chris Loafing and
Travis Clough.
If you or anyone you know needs to get their social media game up, Rich Media, richmediafresno.com. Thank you, Rich, for sponsoring this episode.
And we have a very special guest on with us today. This is someone who we have known for some time. We've started different things with and worked with and love him as a creative person. He's got brilliant ideas. He is a writer, and not just a writer in theory or, as some people say, just someone who puts words down on paper. He actually is having things made in the industry, and they are big things, and we're so excited to have him. We can't wait to the time that we get to actually produce something that we've established or worked on together, but help us welcome the great writer, Will Honley. Thank you for being here.
What's up, guys?
Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
So Will is tuning in, as you can see on Zoom here, but it's like he's here in person. I mean, look at this setup. If you're watching on YouTube.
We even got a microphone for the TV to make it look like he's here with us, in person.
Will, where are you located? You're in LA, right?
I'm in LA, yeah.
Got it. Yeah. So a little bit about Will and his career. Will's credits include The Hive, Bloodline, if you've seen Bloodline with Sean William Scott, right?
Yeah.
That is correct, yeah.
And currently, Escape Room, Tournament of Champions in theaters right now.
Right now.
Which is pretty awesome.
With Logan Miller, who we worked with on Prey.
That's right.
P-R-E-Y, Prey, Predator Prey, not Heavenly Father.
Yes.
Totally different movie.
Different. His upcoming film, Blood, directed by Brad Anderson, is starring Michelle Monaghan. That's awesome. And is scheduled to release next year. He loves all things horror, sci-fi, and, of course, one of his cats is likely to make an appearance at some point during this podcast.
Yes.
I'll try to block them out. Try to block them out if they show up.
Yes.
Will, welcome to the show. It's good to see you, dude. It's been a bit. As Travis said, we've worked on a couple different things together, and
but they haven't come to fruition yet.
Yeah, we have a script together that we worked on. Well, the first one we did was Guardian Angels.
Yeah,
Guardian Angels script.
Yeah, which every time we talk about it, we feel fond memories of it, and the idea is to resurrect it somehow so we can actually make it.
I was just telling someone about it literally yesterday. And kind of giving me the chills again about like how good that story was.
Well, plus, and you tell me, Will, if you feel this way, I feel like there's in this era of filmmaking for the last decade or so, it's been very like dark, realistic, gritty, and it feels like there's a little bit of a gap in the movies that are just like fun. You know what I mean? Just like silly fun, like Goonies, Back to the Future, feel good, kind of adventurous. And there's been a very gritty thing. And look, we haven't helped in our movies. We haven't helped that. I don't know about, some of what you've been writing. But what do you think about that? Is that a real thing in the industry?
I think so. I think there's been sort of a tilt towards that kind of realistic, gritty, just kind of dark aesthetic in a sense. But I think that what I'm hearing a lot of, especially coming out of the pandemic, is that people want to turn away from that. You know, we've had real world and gritty in our everyday lives now for a while. It's been kind of dark. So what I'm hearing now from people is they want more fun projects. They want things that are more escapist, that are just going to kind of, I don't know, distract us a little bit from the horror going on outside. So I think that's now's the time. Now's the time.
Yeah,
I agree.
Maybe like a little less depressing, a little less political, a little less, or maybe a lot less political, a lot less depressing, a lot less dramatic. Not to take away from the drama, but to basically not make it so drab and dreary. Like, life is good. And I think a lot of the art that came out of the last decade is great. And it's been thought-provoking in that, genre and in that vibe. But at the same time, it's like you go too far one way, you got to come back and really give it some life and energy and fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, it's like movies are supposed to be an escape as well, And
like
it's
you
like
said.
you're, trying to be transported to another place, another time, another, not
into what we're in right now. Not to what we're living. Please, no.
Exactly. Well, Will, tell us a little bit about how you got started in the industry. Some of your earliest experiences with writing, and maybe, what was that script or that, piece of material that kind of got you noticed or kind of got your foot in the door.
You guys want pitfalls. How much time do we have?
Right.
We can be here till tomorrow. No,
we want fun.
my
we
first
want fun. Not so drab and dark and dreary, but
no. My first, I've been writing since high school, and came out to LA to pursue that. And I went to UCLA and did the professional program there, and then went out and get my master's as well. And when I was in the master's program, many more years ago than I would care to admit, I wrote a script called Flashback, and Flashback sort of became is sort of what launched my career. Some managers read it. A friend of mine, I had given it to a friend of mine. He gave it to his managers. They read it. They fell in love with it. They started passing it around. Agents got a hold of it. That's when I got my first managers, my first agents. And that to this day is still one of kind of my sample calling card scripts that when I'm going out for jobs and stuff, my reps will send out. So that was cool. That was interesting. I imagine it's not entirely dissimilar from you guys and the Gallows. It was a script that was kind of a lightning in a bottle kind of script.
Yeah.
That if I could replicate that every time, I would,
right.
But I can't. I don't know how to. And so it's kind of a contained sci-fi script. So coming off of that, I got offered a lot of sci-fi stuff, a lot of contained stuff, and that eventually spiraled into me writing horror. Because as you guys know, a lot of horror is contained as well.
Right. It's interesting though how the pigeonholing happens.
Yeah.
I mean, right? I mean, they think, oh, sci-fi, you must be into that, and let's just focus you on that. Same thing with us with horror. It was like, oh, well, yeah, we don't, we're not really in horror in this moment, or we've got this other stuff that probably isn't for you. It's like, no, you haven't seen the action stuff that we filmed. Like, it's pretty incredible. Or the comedy stuff that we filmed. It's pretty great. So,
right. And did that script ever get made?
No, it's gone through several different options. It's been passed around to various producers. Right now, though, we've got it with a really great producer, a guy named Brian Kavanaugh Jones.
That's
we know Brian.
Oh,
yeah.
BKJ is he's fantastic. We're doing that with it's him and Rob Herding, who's actually my former agent, who now works with Brian over at Q Code, and we've got a great director attached, a guy named Javier Gutierrez. So we're trying to cast it right now. So this is, we've been at this stage with it several times, and it's always kind of fallen apart for one reason or another. But fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Isn't that crazy how that happens? I mean, can you speak to that just for a second? Like,
well, and the length of time.
In terms of young writers who maybe don't know much about the process or something like that, like how frequently does that happen? Like what is the ratio of scripts that get made versus scripts that don't get made?
In my experience, we're at like a 25-1 type scenario.
Yeah.
No, it's a lot. Things falling apart is much more the norm than things coming together. And there's a number of reasons for that we can start to dissect, I think. But really, when a movie gets made, period. Never mind it being good,
right.
But just when a movie gets made. When a movie gets made, period, the stars had to align in such a way for that to happen. And when it's good, that's that. I mean, we all like good movies,
right.
As opposed to less good movies. But having an actual good movie is kind of icing on the cake, to some degree. Just the process of trying to put movies together is. I do not envy producers trying to wrangle those elements between finding the script, getting the cast, finding the directors, getting the money together. It's just it's a Herculean effort, and yeah, it doesn't go the right way most of the time.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, we've talked about this like on 3 different episodes already.
We're always congratulatory to those that make even a terrible movie.
Yeah.
because it is such a miracle.
They got it made.
That it even happened.
Yeah. The fact that we were able to see it and categorize it as a terrible movie means that it got made and was in front of our faces, you know, like, and as you're saying, like, just to get it beyond the script phase, getting it in the hands of a producer who will start taking those physical steps, that in itself is just a huge mountain to climb. And as you said, there's, you know, your ratio is probably much better than most, 25-1. I mean, I imagine a lot of writers out there have hundreds of scripts that are just, they've never been able to get them made, you know? And
I've heard it said that they are just lining bird cages.
Yeah, it's so sad.
Pretty sad.
It's so sad.
Yeah, I think in my experience, I think the key is not only finding the right producer for the project, but the right producer at the right time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, I think that is, and there's no amount of, there's no amount of sort of studying or research or training or experience that can make that happen. It really is just, I don't want to say luck because I don't want to just chalk it up to that, but it kind of is, right? It is kind of just having enough contacts, knowing enough people that when you have a script that you believe in, you hope you find that one person who has enough bandwidth on their plate at this particular moment to fall in love with the script and take it from there. I think that's the key.
That's totally true. You got to have the talent, obviously, to create something that grabs people's attention.
And then the passion.
Yes.
And then the passion. And then that passion has to, connect with the other person to get passion from that producer, because they're going to spend the next
couple years of
their life on that project. So they need to be, it's like, I love this. I want to help this baby come into the world, you know?
That leads me to a question, actually, Will. I mean, I'm sure it varies wildly depending on the project, but what would you say the average length of time it is that you spend on a script from beginning to end?
That I spend on a script? It can vary. Yeah, it can vary pretty significantly. I'm trying to think. I think Flashback I wrote relatively quickly at the time. It was maybe a couple of months. The shortest amount of time I've ever spent on a script is Blood, actually, the movie that we've got coming out next year, that Brad Anderson directed. And I wrote the original draft of that in just a fever dream of about 4 days.
Wow.
And what will be on the screen is a lot of that. Most of that was written in that 4 days. It didn't undergo a ton of changes.
That's crazy.
So that's crazy even for me. I would say average, probably about a month to 2 months, just to get a first draft. That's not a draft I'm going to show anybody. It's not a draft that is going to go into the world. Like I'll show my writing partner, who is also my wife, April, especially if it's something I've done by myself. If it's something we're doing together, she's obviously seen it, at which point it would go to our managers. But I think for me, so much of the heavy lifting comes before you even type fade in. So much of the heavy lifting is in the outline phase and in the thinking phase. Yeah. This is just sort of unstructured, just, letting your mind wander with it and just sort of seeing what you can come up with. Yeah. I think I would say the almost the more pertinent question for me is how long does an idea marinate before I even sit down to start working on it?
Yeah.
And that can be 6 months to 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, that's exactly kind of how I feel like I operate, and Travis probably too. I'm like connecting dots in my head for a long time before I gain the confidence to like actually start putting it on paper. And I don't consider myself really a writer. So as a job, like it's kind of a chore for me to get to that first stage, which I hear a lot of writers say, like, getting those first words on the page is always the big step, but I agree.
The best of times, it was the worst of times.
Yeah. I agree. I spend a lot of time with it in my head before it even.
I feel like for me, I'll come up with a scene or an idea for a scene that could kickstart a movie or be a big element of a movie. And I feel like I can just speak it out into my phone, kind of all the elements that happen pretty quickly. My problem is I have more scattered throughout my mind about it, and I kind of hone in on the one scene. And I've connected the dots, but I need to find ways to help connect the dots throughout the rest of the script, kind of to thread it together. And that's where I struggle.
I was just about to ask, we were talking about this just briefly before the podcast started, but tell us about that dynamic working with your wife on scripts.
It's both amazing and no, it's just amazing. It is just amazing. But yeah, I mean, we will just this week actually we're fleshing out an idea for a thing we want to pitch, and so that consisted of just like 3 or 4 days of us just sitting there and being like, what if this happened? What if this happened? And the thing that we're working on is kind of a contained thriller, sort of in the vein of Panic Room.
Nice.
And so with these kind of contained stories, you've got a specific location that you're inside of. You're probably not going to leave that location, and you've got a set cast of characters as well. You're not going to bring in more characters like at a certain point in the story. You're just very limited in your sort of the chess pieces you have to use. And so we, in talking about it, we knew where we were going to begin, we knew where we were going to end. And so it becomes a question of us talking through, okay, we've got these 3 characters here doing this thing. We got these 2 characters here doing this thing. How are they going to meet up? Where is that going to happen? And that's sometimes a very difficult question to answer,
Yeah.
if when you've got killers roaming a space and all that kind of stuff. I find that through talking through these things, we talk ourselves into boxes and then talk ourselves out of the boxes. And that is where the drama and the suspense comes into play. And so it's a lot of me tossing out an idea, her being like, no, I hate that. That's terrible. What about this?
Yeah.
What about, but she'll take a kernel of that, right? Yeah. That's the other, a quick sidebar of working with your wife. There's no diplomacy. There's no sense of, oh, I shouldn't say this thing. This is hurtful. We've been together for 13 years. We're very honest with each other. So if I have a bad idea, if she has a bad idea, we don't tiptoe, right? She's like, no, that's terrible. But often what comes out of that is a nugget of something good. It'll be just a kernel of something that she'll then expand upon, and then she'll toss it back to me and I'll expand on it some more, and vice versa. So it's a growth process. And I feel like one of my favorite little bits about this process is from Stephen King, who Stephen obviously knows a thing or two about writing. Yeah. And in his On Writing book talks about how your first draft is you telling yourself the story, and the rewriting is you telling other people the story.
Yeah, I like that.
I think that's what that initial process is, whether you're doing it by yourself, which I've written many scripts by myself too, where you're just sort of sitting there with the ideas and letting them percolate and figuring out which one's the best and then weaving them together, or whether you're sitting on a couch with your wife for 3 days telling each other the story back and forth. I think that's the key jumping off point to getting a script off the ground.
I love that. We had a friend who is an actor. He starred in our latest movie, Held, and he's also a writer, Bart Johnson, he's done a bunch of screenwriting classes and just has been around in the industry for a long time. And he was telling us, go if you have like a story you're working on or a script you're working on. He said, like, I once read this piece of information and I tried it and it was really helpful to go to like a Starbucks or something and see if you can find a stranger to like tell your idea to, and like actually tell them the whole story, and you'll find yourself filling in the blanks of what's missing, of what needs, because you want them to stay engaged, and you'll be able to tell right away if they're staying engaged or if they're kind of like floating off into, they're not paying attention anymore. But I think it stems perfectly from what you're saying. It's like, you got to know the story for yourself, right? Have it in your head from beginning to end. And then, probably not like this for everyone, but I think that would be how I would do it. I would want to know that story in my own mind before I would start to kind of put it out there and put it on paper and really kind of get in the nitty gritty of stuff, because then I could easily see myself getting overwhelmed or like getting into too fine of details right away on the script and find myself discouraged, before I've got it all fleshed out.
I think we've done that after doing a lot of work on Secondhand. We sat down with Gigi for lunch one time, with the girl who was in the short
sure.
that we did. And she was like, how's that going? Like, what else is new? And so, it had been a while before we had described it to anyone, even ourselves.
Just walking through the story
and we
with
went
her.
through it,
Yeah.
and we were like, we were all fired up. We were getting passionate, and like she was like wide-eyed, like, yeah, oh, that would be great. And I was just like, there's a lot of stuff in there that we had never really talked about, like that we added that was really important. Like, and we wouldn't have got to that had we not been trying to explain it to her.
Yeah.
In that moment. So it was interesting to do that and go through that process.
Will, I know a lot of writers out there, it's a struggle to make a living as a writer, right? I mean, are you and April, do you guys still have like regular jobs? I'm using air quotes here, regular jobs, or are you writing full time?
I will say we still have kind of part-time side gigs. We do not need them. We do have enough incoming from writing that we could totally just live off that and be
That's
fine.
amazing.
I like. Oh, it's
congratulations.
It's a blessing. It's
honestly.
Oh,
congrats.
thank you. It took many years to get to that point. But I think that having other stuff to occupy your mind with, a simple day job, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It can be. I can't tell you how many ideas I get as I'm not writing, as I'm doing, as I'm doing copywriting or whatever else it is that I happen to be working on. I think it can be inspiring that way too. And it can fill you with a certain like sort of anger about it in a sense. Like, oh my God, I'm sitting here not working on my script. Oh, this is so angry. Just take that passion, take that energy and then put it into the script. And then, it can be good. It can be healthy.
Nice. Yeah. I like that perspective. I think that's smart too.
Well, I think it's cool that it's not above or beneath any of you to do any of that kind of stuff. Like, I have a friend who had a job and he paid super well, but like the economy tanked and like they got rid of that position and a whole bunch of other positions, which kind of tells me it's like, well, that wasn't really a necessary position if at the second that it's gone. And then several years, I think, going without finding the right job because it wouldn't pay enough or like, and I'm like, man, dude, just take what comes, get something, get your life going. And it was kind of sad to see how people could get depressed or fall into that kind of state of depression. But writing, doing side gigs, staying productive. I think that's the point. What you're doing is you're staying productive. You're not letting any idle time interfere with your life. I think that's important.
I wish I would. I'm a total workaholic, which I hate that term. I think I've discovered that's a pet peeve. I don't like that word at all, but I really am. And I wish that I could sort of just relax and I've got like a stack of like 15 video games I haven't had a chance to play, but which is, it's always fun to sort of decompress a little bit. But I just find that after like, I don't know, a few hours of decompressing, I'm like, okay, what can we do now? What can I work on? What can I do? Even in April, I will say this is another good thing about having a wife and a writing partner who is all in one, is that we'll work for a few hours and we'll get like a pretty good day's work done. And then I'll be like, okay, we've got another couple hours before dinner. What are we going to do? She's like, I'm done. Like we finished the work. We did a good job. Let's decompress a little bit too. So I think it is balancing. It's good. It's so helpful to have that.
Yeah, Travis and I, although we are not married, we've been together as a duo long enough that we have a lot of similar working, intricacies relationship wise. Like we will also challenge each other and tell each other, hey, it's time to take a break or it's time to like watch a show or something.
We've been in business for half of my marriage and I'm coming up on my 20th anniversary with my wife, Amber, in
That's kind of crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we are the same way where we'll, similar to also like there's no holding back. Like if it's a dumb idea or like, all the things we'll just be like, hey, no, that doesn't work. Here's why. And it's like, we're not trying to tiptoe around and obviously we don't want to hurt each other's feelings, but we're pretty honest with each other as well, I would say.
I think you have to be.
Yeah.
I mean, the people that walk on eggshells never have a true relationship with anyone. Like,
and you waste a lot of time too. Like you can waste a lot of time, I think, by doing that as well, by just trying to be nice or like, politically correct or whatever. Like you could waste a ton of time on a bad idea, you know?
And it could continue to encourage that bad idea without resolving it.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I think, because even if we were in a situation, I don't want to hurt April's feelings ever. But if we were in a situation where I was tiptoeing around something and I was giving false praise or whatever it is, as soon as that goes to somebody else, as soon as that goes to a producer or a director or an actor, who doesn't have that desire to not make April sad, they're going to call her on it. Yeah. They're gonna say this isn't working or this is bad or whatever. So there's no sense in there's no sense in sparing someone's feelings. Just give it to them straight, and we're all professionals. We're all capable of getting a note and internalizing it and understanding that that's not a personal reflection on anything. Just take the note, absorb it, and make it better.
I think it's good for writers and creators to hear those things too. I mean, even though, especially I feel like early on or inexperienced people maybe like take more offense to that than they should. I think the more and more you hear feedback, notes, criticism, what have you, you get used to that, and you start to understand more and more like how important it is and how it is that you just need to hear that stuff, and that's how you're going to improve.
I completely agree. I think very early in my career, you'd get I would get a note. It wouldn't even be like a particularly terrible note, it would just be like oh, this guy should do this instead of that kind of thing, and I would get kind of depressed with it. I was like, not so much that the note destroyed anything about the script, but much more like, oh, I should have seen that. Like I should have just known that. And I've gotten to the point where it's like, I can't know everything. I can't intuit how people are going to read a scene or what they're going to take away from a scene. So like the best I can do is the best I can do. And if I get a note that says I didn't do perfectly, that's okay. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
I've gotten some terrible notes over the years, and it would take a lot to rattle me at this point.
I think there actually are a lot of writers and creators out there too who really internalize the stories that they're telling in a way that, like, when they get a criticism or a note, it's almost like, oh, part of my soul just got, a
little bit like a character assassination or something. Yeah. Like, hey, are you questioning my ability?
You're questioning my beliefs. You're questioning who I am. And to an extent, I mean, that's kind of admirable because it's like, okay, you're putting a lot into this. I can see that. You're really passionate about that. That's great. But at the same time, I do think it is important to separate that. It's like you are not your work. You are making something for people to watch and be entertained. But don't take offense if someone's, criticizing that. They're not criticizing you as a person. But I understand how it can feel like that sometimes. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely.
I recently heard a writer say something about notes and the criticism and they didn't make it the way you wrote it, and he was like, look, who painted who is it that painted the Sistine Chapel?
Michelangelo.
Yeah. It's like he was commissioned by the church to do that painting. Like, did he want to put an angel somewhere else? Oh, and by the way, you're doing it on the ceiling, so like they basically bought it from him. It wasn't his. At a certain point, it really wasn't his. Right. It's like, it's the same thing. It's like if you created a statue or a painting and then you sold it to someone, they could put like goggles on that statue and take a finger off and make it their own because it's theirs. So you have to be able to separate yourself. When a studio buys a script, it becomes theirs, and you don't need to be upset about it, and just know that someone appreciated your art to the point that they wanted it, and then they wanted to enhance it whatever way they wanted to. So,
right.
Well, I think too, I think it's a recognition that it's a collaborative medium. Yep. You guys do a lot of stuff. Even you guys can't do everything. I know I can't do everything. And I certainly can't, I certainly don't have the, $5 to $10 million that I would need in order to retain complete creative control over a thing. So you're going to have to hire other people. You're hiring, I mean, not you specifically, but, the production has to hire other people. Hire the best people you can, appreciate their input, and accept that they're not going to see things exactly the way you do. Like it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Well, I can say, Will, working with you on the stuff we've worked on, you've been an awesome person to work with. You've always taken notes and thoughts with great consideration, and there's never been a feeling of an offense taken, or that you're like going above and beyond to defend a certain thing for any particular reason, or anything like that, unless it really is important to the story.
Yeah.
So we appreciate that, and it was super fun to work with you on the full script that we did together for beginning to end, which you wrote, which is Guardian Angels, which is just still an awesome awesome idea. I really want to make it. It actually is one of those ones that's like a story that we're passionate about. Like
you leave the theater thinking like, I can be a big difference for good in the world. That's what we wanted, and that's what I feel like we have and are shooting for with it. Anyway,
if anyone wants to kind of just get a sense of what this project is, I'm not going to go too in depth here, but look up a video on YouTube called "When It's Not Your Time." And this was kind of the video that inspired this Guardian Angel idea. And I think when you watch it, you'll immediately see what I'm talking about. And anyway, we worked with Will. This was probably back in 2012, 2013, maybe.
It was right when Gallows came out. It was right around then.
Maybe 2014, 15. Because it was going to be our next movie. Yeah. It was going to be our next movie after Gallows. And then some things happened. Where Blumhouse released a faith-based movie that just didn't go well.
Yeah.
And they were getting scared, and things, that again, things get set up and then they don't happen for whatever reason. And that
far
was
more often than like you were saying, far more often things fall apart than they come together.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. Mm-hmm.
So it's like, we still have that movie, still want to get it made. It's just got to find, like you said, that right producer or that right partner at the right time.
Or maybe it's us. We're working on a fund.
Yeah.
Let's see what we can, to maintain some of that independence.
Yeah.
that $5 to $10 million you were talking about to maintain control. Like, we're trying to get that for kind of a slate of movies, and then build upon that bigger and bigger. And create some more of this fun stuff that needs to be made.
So, Will, tell us a little bit about Escape Room 2. As we mentioned, it's in theaters right now. Now, I know you've worked with sort of a team of writers on that. So tell us about the process of working on Escape Room 2.
Yeah, it was a really interesting process. I was brought on, I pitched on, and was hired to rewrite an existing script they had. They had a script that they had that just wasn't quite clicking for whatever reason. And then when I was hired to do that, which was a very different script, very different story with different characters, another team had pitched the Tournament of Champions idea. And that team was hired to write the Tournament of Champions idea. I didn't know this at the time. I would find out a few weeks later. All I knew at the time was I was being hired to rewrite the existing script. The other team was writing a different script.
Got it.
This is something that happens more often than people think, right?
Like a
where
bake-off?
multiple writers will get hired, or multiple trailer makers will get hired, or multiple composers for trailers or whatever will get hired. And it's like they're trying to kind of have things to compare to, right?
This is the first I'd heard about it on the writing end. It's possible that it happens on the writing side. In this particular case, they were already starting pre-production on it. So because the movie had already been greenlit, they were pretty there was a release date. Well, the release date obviously shifted a couple times because of things like this, where the script just wasn't ready to go yet, and then was shifted a few more times because of COVID. But they were locked and loaded. They needed this thing to go. They needed pages. So I think their idea was, let's double our efforts. Let's hire two different teams. I was an individual, but two different sets of writers. And see, like, let's get something workable. Let's see what we like. And what happened in this process was, after about 2 or 3 weeks of me rewriting the other version, they decided that they liked the Tournament Champions idea better. And they were very nice about it. They were like, listen, it's nothing you're doing wrong. We just, we like this idea, seems fresh to us, seems marketable, or what have you. And so at that point, I stopped work on the version I was doing and started doing the Tournament Champions version. So at that point, the studio had they were going to end up with two different, very similar scripts. We had slightly different characters. They had a character in theirs that I didn't have in mind. Slightly different characters. And then, even though the mechanisms in the rooms were the same in terms of the subway car is electrified and the beach is quicksand. Even though the mechanisms were the same, the puzzles were very different. And so at that point, I did my initial draft. They did their draft. I finished my draft first by like a week or two or something. And at that point, they hired me to rewrite my version. And then I finally, at that point, got to see their version, which was, I hadn't spoken to them, or I didn't know what they were doing. I knew that they were doing basically the same thing as me, but I didn't see how they were putting their pieces together. So that was really interesting. Was finally getting to see, like, I don't know, sort of an alternate version of the thing that you'd been working on.
Yeah, the multiverse version.
Yeah.
That's in another dimension. In another dimension, this is what I would have wrote, perhaps. That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, you won the tournament. So you won the tournament of champions in the script writing by getting through it sooner, and then being able to see their work to use it to help enhance what you had been writing, right?
Yeah, it was even though I still to this day, I've never spoken to those two writers, and I've traded emails with the writing team that came on after me, even though we've never actually communicated. It was a very collaborative process in a way, because the mere fact that like the movie had been greenlit, they're trying to get production going. Everyone's anxious to get that going, meant that sort of similar to the things we're talking about, where like there's no time to tiptoe. There's no time to tiptoe. Best ideas, the best idea would win. And I did my two drafts. Another set of writers came in after me, and they worked through most of the production. And then I came on during the last 3 or 4 weeks of production and ended like the final polish on a few of the rooms. Or 2 of the rooms, I guess.
That's so amazing. And even during production, you came on to help polish script stuff while they were even filming the thing. It's crazy. They
had shot, at this point, they'd shot the bank room, and what I heard from the studio was the bank room they wanted the next 2 rooms to be a little bit more streamlined. They thought the bank room was maybe a little bit too chaotic.
Okay.
And so I came on to try to streamline the other 2 rooms. The final room in the movie, which is the acid rain room, the final room in the main body of the movie, which is the acid rain room. That was a room that the writers after me originated. I'd never seen that till I came on to do my production polish on it, and so that was really fun too. Was to get like this kind of, just for me as the guy who worked on the first 2 drafts of the script, to get this other room that was totally unexpected, and I thought they did a fantastic job with it, and I love how it plays in the movie. But yeah, it really was collaborative. The writers who wrote at the same time as me came back on a certain point too, and contributed a little bit to the room. So it really was like an all hands on deck situation where egos didn't get in the way, and we just tried to put the best thing on the screen possible.
That's really cool. Now I'm curious, as I gotta imagine that writing these rooms, the clues and the solves and the puzzles and stuff, that's got to be pretty complex. I mean, are you a escape room connoisseur? I mean, did you have to do research to do some of this stuff?
Yeah, I hadn't done any escape rooms before coming on. I've done one since then, and we won. We did very good.
Oh, nice.
No, when I went in to meet with the director and the producer the first time, they asked like, have you done any escape rooms? And I said no, but I've played a lot of Legend of Zelda, and so I feel like my dungeon experience with Legend of Zelda, like I am really good at like puzzles and stuff, and they didn't quite see how that translated, but it did. It totally did.
Right.
But yeah, it was a process. It was, because each room is sort of a contained mystery puzzle in and of itself. So it's seeing, okay, we've got this space. Here's what I've got. We're in a bank. Okay. What does a bank have? Okay. It's got this thing. It's got that thing. It's got this. We know there's going to be lasers. Okay. Let's start putting some of these puzzle pieces together. And so it was just a question of building those puzzles from the ground up. And it was, I spent, I think between my 2 drafts, I think I worked on the script for about 3 months straight. And most of that 3 months was just moving those chess pieces around the board and coming up with those puzzles and those solutions. So
it's really not that different now that I think about it, from writing any other kind of screenplay in the sense of you're trying to build suspense, you're trying to build unanswered questions, right, for the audience to be on their toes, to keep them guessing. I mean, those are the elements you're putting into any script, right? So now it's just a matter of, okay, how do I contain that to this sequence and use the mechanisms that people are commonly, accustomed to seeing in an escape room, and kind of flipping it on its head, like that. It's kind of like a what do you call it? A macro version or micro version of a full screenplay.
Yeah. It's almost like it's like an anthology almost. Each room is its own story.
Yeah. That's kind of what I was trying to say, I guess.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then there's the sort of the connective tissue between all the rooms, which is the big mystery, the bigger question that the characters are trying to solve. And so it's more, I will say it's more complicated than it might appear at first blush.
I imagine, because I've only done escape room one time and I was pretty dang confused. My team really carried it. I was just like, I don't know what the heck's going on. But the first movie, I know we saw, and it was very complex in a fun way. The hints were not easy to come up with. And Logan Miller, again, I got to mention that. Logan Miller, who's, survived the first movie. Now he's a big character in the second movie as well. We worked with him on Prey. And that dude's dedicated. I don't know if you got a chance to meet Logan.
I've never met him, but I do know that I do know he's dedicated. Whenever we would write something into the script, like a stunt or something challenging or just something that an actor might not want to do. What I heard from the producers in the studio was, just have Logan do it. Just have, he'll do it. He'll do anything. And so I have a particular fondness for him, because I had to shift some stuff away from other characters. They're like, oh, he'll do that. He's not afraid.
I've heard that too, actually, just in articles and stuff, but we can definitely attest to that on set. I mean, we were doing some pretty crazy stuff with him on our reshoots, and he was always game. Very, very, he's just a team player.
Yeah. We all got wrecked. That's what I hear. We were in like an old dusty building, and like between takes, we were all trying to wear masks between takes and stuff. And he like came in, he was like, "Let's do this," and then like the next day he was like, he was like wheezy. He was a little bit like Wheezy from Toy Story, you know, like, oh no. But he was a champ. And if things didn't seem like they were working out in different aspects of what we were trying to do, or like a stunt wasn't just right, he would roll with the punches and the adjustments, and it was great.
I see these memes on Facebook sometimes where it's like what my mom thinks I do, what my friends think I do, what I actually do. Have you seen those? What would you say? What is that for you as a writer? What are the common misconceptions of being a writer, and what's it really like?
I'm so deep in it. I don't know what normal average people think being a screenwriter is. Honestly, I think that I know that there's a perception that people go to see movies and everybody's a critic and everybody is in fact entitled to their opinion, and that's all well and good. But you hear often like, oh, I could have written that, or I could have written something better than that, or what have you. So I think there's probably a perception that writing movies is easy, or that oh, they'll just film any old crap. I think that there is some of that in the consciousness. And it's not that, every movie, I think for the most part, I've never heard of an instance where this isn't the case. Every movie I think is made in good faith. I think it's made by a group of people trying to do the best that they can. And so I think that, I don't know, I think that if you judge just by the finished product, I think it's easy to come away with a conclusion of, oh, they just slapped some stuff together and they didn't care. It's like, no, maybe there was some missteps, but everybody cared. I think where that becomes applied to the writing process is that, and I'm certainly guilty of this too. I even as a writer, I'm guilty of it, where I'll see a finished product and I'll be like, oh my God, that that writer's just a genius. That writer is just, the brilliant things they did. And then you'll dig into a little bit more. It's like, oh no, that line of dialogue was improvised by the actor, or that the reason the film was shot there was because they couldn't get another location. It wasn't just because the writer had like a brilliant idea for this brilliant location. And so I think that, I don't know, I think that so much of it sort of falls onto the writer's shoulders in some ways, but it isn't applicable to the writing at all. I actually just found this out. I was looking into, I don't know, I fell down an internet rabbit hole, as will often happen. And one of my favorite movie scenes ever is the scene in Rocky, where Rocky and Adrian go on their date at the skating rink. And for years I've been like, what a brilliant scene. Oh my God. And it is a brilliant scene. But for a number of reasons, mostly because the Thanksgiving and the skating rink is empty. And I just found out the other day that the reason the skating rink is empty was because they couldn't afford to pay the extras to skate that day. So they engineered this entire thing, this very intimate, private moment between these two characters that wasn't scripted that way. There's a lot that goes into the writing. There's a lot that gets blamed on the writers, but so much of it is out of our control once it leaves our computers. And so I don't know. Hopefully that approaches some kind of answer.
No, you hit and touched upon a lot of important aspects. Again, communication, the collaborative effort of filmmaking, and again, going back to what we started saying here, is it's such an effort to get a movie made that I do think it is often unfair to criticize, any aspect, but definitely just kind of blanket as a whole, like, oh, that sucked because of this, or that was great because of this, either or, good or bad, because it is such a team effort, and there are so many little things that go into what can make or break a scene, or what make things memorable. Everybody has something to lend to that final product. Not just the writer, not just the actors, not just the director, there's so much.
True. I do feel like there are some movies that I'll see that it's clear that it's like a money grab, or a let's see how much we can get off of furthering this franchise or whatever. And you see the acting, and the actors are like, they were so huge for so long, and now they're just really old. And so they need to do their intense dialogue heavy dramatic scenes, like sitting down, because if they stand up for too long, they might fall over, like there's movies like that where I'm like, oh man, I love this guy, but like, he's just really old, and they just are filming this scene with him sitting down so he doesn't have to stand up, I feel like there's movies like that are disappointing, but you make a great point in that. And I think they should be criticized. Those movies should be criticized heavily, because you have a big studio spending $100 million on a franchise movie, and then they only give you nothing that even compares to how great the franchise was in its heyday. I'm talking about the Terminator movies specifically. Let's just get right to it. I'm talking Terminator.
I could feel that. Yeah.
T2 was huge. It's like such an amazing movie. T1, T2. And then like they kind of went downhill. Some of them had some really cool effects and things like that. But like the most recent one, it's Linda Hamilton and Arnold, who I want to meet and work with both of them because I love them. But they were just like sitting on a log saying, the world is going to end. And yes, we've got to do something. And all right, let me get up from this position. It's so hard. I'm like, it's not the same. And they made a bunch of money, so. But then you have movies that really, truly have put some tremendous effort into it that didn't have those budgets, that didn't have the history of the franchise, that for a critic to take a dump on 2 hours is sad, not realizing that he's taken a dump on 2 or more years of collaborative effort from people. And that good faith is important to remember, but they don't care one whit about it. Critics don't. I once heard someone say, yeah, critics, don't worry about critics. They're the scum of the earth.
to be fair though, that is kind of what you just did to that recent Terminator movie.
I did. I took a dump on it.
Just think for a second, the writer and the crew and everyone who worked on that movie, even though you're right, It does feel like a money grab, right, from the studio level.
Yeah.
But to Will's point, there was a whole team of people that worked on that movie that are proud of it, that spent a lot of their lives working on it tirelessly. Think of the VFX crew, everyone that are proud of that work. You know?
The VFX crew, and a lot of them didn't really get the time or resources they probably needed to do more.
Yeah.
I feel like every artist really wishes that they could have done more or would have done more. So I appreciate that. But at the same time, I'm like, maybe it's just because I haven't worked on a movie that's been a budget that size. And I feel like, man, I would have just put every ounce of energy and love into making it the best possible thing. Because that's what we do on our tiny movies. So I don't know. Maybe it's not to say that they haven't. And I can't say that they didn't put that kind of effort in. It just didn't feel that way to me. You know, I'm watching a movie. I feel like Troll 2, or what are these terrible movies that are like so awful? What's the other best, worst movies? The Room. The Room. I mean, it's like there's a certain amount of like genuineness to that kind of stuff that you're like, holy crap, like this movie's terrible, but like they were fighting for the best possible. They just didn't have it within them, but they gave everything within them to it.
Yeah.
That sometimes I feel is lacking in some of these bigger movies, that they can kind of just throw money at the problem and try to fix it that way.
That's all fair points. I think it's good to just appreciate, whatever it is you're consuming. Always have at least a nugget of appreciation for the craftsmanship that went into it, even if it was crap. Like some of these movies.
Which we always do praise people for even getting a movie done. I think an appreciation and a perspective for nuance is what more people need to have. I think generally just in the world, I think people would be far less critical if they understood what it was like walking in the other person's shoes. Maybe I need to do that. What's it like to walk in Arnold's shoes? Maybe I should walk in Arnold's shoes for a day. And then I would just be yoked and huge and ripped.
Not anymore, unfortunately.
So, Will, is there anything that you would suggest, like any books, literature, or any videos or anything that could help explain the writing process that would give a leg up to a beginner or someone who's new, or even a veteran?
Or something that's helped you.
Yeah. I constantly find myself trying to learn. I mean, I've been doing this for a while now, but there's still growth and learning to be done. I learned so much about screenwriting just at UCLA, between the professional program and the MFA. So, I mean, the books that I was consuming from there were Hal Ackerman's book or Richard Walter's book. Paul Chitlick has a book specifically on rewriting, which rewriting I think is its own specific skill in a way.
Yeah.
So I think that's really helpful. I think writers now, people coming up now, have so many more resources than I had 15 years ago, or 20 years ago. There's so many YouTube videos, the lessons from the screenplay videos, which I think we've shared before. I think you guys sent me one at some point. I know you guys are a fan of those. They're a little masterclass unto themselves.
Yes.
Yeah. The lessons from the screenplay. I can't recommend those highly enough.
Yeah, we love watching those. Yeah.
And they're very accessible.
Yeah.
It's like for people who can't sit down and read a book, because I know it is tricky for some people. They just don't comprehend it, or they can't make themselves do it. Sitting down and watching a video is so different. And you've got visuals, you've got samples, you've got, clips from things that you love.
And character arc timelines that Michael puts a lot of great effort into, and that team, they really do a great job. We highly recommend Lessons from the Screenplay as a great place to learn about
the writing process,
and seeing it through to how it turns into the film, and they go into things that were not so great, but a lot of things that really moved us in ways and show how they're all linked. That's really great.
Yeah.
This kind of dovetails into one of my final questions, Will, is what would you be kind of your top pieces of advice for writing specifically, whether it's a newcomer, again, a veteran, anything that you've picked up that has helped you, if you could kind of sum up some of your top pieces of advice. Yeah,
I think first and foremost, the biggest thing is just to write. It's just to put your butt in the chair and type stuff up and understand that it's probably not going to be good. Like that's okay. I think for new writers especially, there's this idea that once I start punching the keys and once it's there, in black and white, then it's somehow written in stone. And so this perfectionist idea kicks in to where it's like, well, I don't want to put anything on the stone that's going to be bad. So the fear starts. And I think that you just have to accept that it might not be good for a little bit. It is a skill. It is a craft, and it takes a long time to get to the point where you can produce material that is of a quality that you're used to seeing in movies and TV. And that's just how it is. So I think that just sort of putting that fear aside and just diving in one way or another, I think is the best thing that new writers can do. Beyond that, I think that studying the craft, when I was first starting out, I did a lot of watching movies and just breaking them down, because feature film structure in particular is so specific. I should say traditional Hollywood feature film structure, which is what most of certainly American film consists of now, is very specific and has very specific turns and beats and ways that it sort of approaches story. So I think that looking at your favorite movies, figuring out where those turns happen is incredibly illuminating. I remember one of the first times I did this was with The Sixth Sense, which is a phenomenal movie. Even to this day, still holds up. Is a great movie.
And we've heard the script is phenomenal too.
The script. If you have time to read the script, if people want to write horror or thriller, he puts so much tension in the page. It's amazing. But just sort of breaking it down structure wise, we all know what that movie is. And I think when we think about that movie, we think about the I see dead people scene, right?
Yeah.
And it struck me doing the breakdown of that movie. I think that scene happens at the midpoint. There is an hour of movie. There's a whole hour of movie before you even get to that point in the movie. And it struck me as like, oh, like that's kind of amazing in a way. Like the thing the movie is known for doesn't really happen until later. And he gets so much tension and mystery and questions in that first hour, 45 minutes, whatever it is, before reaching that point. And I don't know. I think that it's just illuminating to go back, look at your favorite movies and see when those big moments happen and use that to educate your own process of when you should start sort of putting those big tentpole moments in your own work.
That's really interesting. Yeah. Yeah, that's great advice. Just trying to find stories that you love and then breaking them down, going backwards, kind of, working backwards.
You've done mainly feature film. Have you delved into television writing or anything like that? Or what focus do you want to stay with, or do you want to branch out?
Yeah, I love TV. I would say we watch more TV in this household than we do movies. And I've sold 2 pilots. Okay. I think 2 pilots, and we're gearing up to pitch some more shows for this coming development season. So it's definitely a medium that I appreciate, that I love. It is, from a writing perspective, a different beast than features. It has its own rhythms to it, its own sort of things, especially in a pilot. I always say that a pilot is the hardest thing in the world to write, because you have to tell a complete story in a set amount of time, whether it's 20 minutes or 45 minutes, and then you have to introduce us to these characters, these fully rich characters that are going to carry us through the entire series, and then you have to start laying the groundwork for what that entire series is going to look like. It is a Herculean effort, I think, to write a really good pilot. And for that, I would again just recommend people go and watch their favorite pilots and see how it's done.
When you go to pitch something like that, Will, do you have scripts written for the rest of the series, or do you have kind of just an outline for the rest of the series?
We will. So the first pilot I sold a couple years ago, I had the pilot written, no other scripts, and we just had a pitch document. It was like a 6 or 8 page pitch document that that we delivered verbally, or I delivered verbally, that just ran through the big character arcs. Because they had read the pilot, I didn't need to rehash what the pilot was.
Right.
So I just ran through the character arcs for the season, the story arcs for the season, and then just a tiny bit about like what could happen in subsequent seasons. So that was the first show I sold. The second show, April and I sold together, which I will say having a writing partner is great for a number of reasons. One of the biggest is that when doing 25-minute long pitches, somebody else takes 12 and a half minutes.
Yes.
That's fantastic. Love that part.
Yeah.
For that one, we sold just off the pitch. We didn't have the pilot written. We had no scripts written. It was just the pitch. And so, yeah, if people are thinking of working in TV or writing pilots, I would recommend not writing beyond the pilot. In the event that the story does sell, the studio, the network, your actors, people are going to have opinions on what should go into the subsequent stories.
Yeah.
So unless you're just doing it for practice or to give yourself like a better sense of the world and the story and where it could go, I would recommend just writing the pilot and stopping there. But yeah.
That's cool. No, it's helpful for me even and us as we're about to pitch a pilot that we shot. We actually shot the pilot physically, but in terms of the pitch, it's like, that's cool to hear that, the amount of detail we should sort of put into the rest of the pitch or the rest of the series.
Well, it makes me excited because we have a full outline for the entire season.
Right.
And it's actually really I feel motivated by it.
But there's room for development and ideas.
Yeah, there totally is room. But also having it kind of laid out in a good way, I think people see that, oh man, these guys really have a full vision for this thing. Sure, there's details that need to be added to paint the full picture, but I can see the trail leading to the end, and it seems like a really fun adventure. So,
right.
I'm excited about that.
Will, are there any stories of that you've heard or that of scripts getting made or getting sold or getting passed to this person, this industry insider, getting noticed, that have inspired you, that you saw something happen in the industry that just made you think, okay, I can do this. I can write something, even if it's unconventional, and get it. It can get made because look what happened to this movie or this script. Is there anything like that you've heard that's been cool to you and inspired you?
I've got two for you. One is a personal story. The other one is sort of a less personal story. But I'll start with that one. When I first started writing, I'm from Missouri, which Missouri feels like it's about 1 billion miles away from Hollywood and all things Hollywood. But I got really into Kevin Smith, the movies of Kevin Smith. Mm-hmm. If anybody knows about the origin story of Clerks and all that, that sort of inspired me. The idea that this guy took it upon himself, maxed out his credit cards and just did a thing. He was in Jersey, I was in Missouri, but like it suddenly felt attainable, Right. And I that to me, it made it feel real. And so that was sort of sort of a big first piece for me. And I think starting on this journey was sort of demystifying it. And I think that nowadays, especially with digital media and you can shoot a movie on your cell phone, right? So the stuff that we have to work with now compared to 20 years ago, people that are coming up now have so many options with what to do. But the other story I'll tell real quickly hasn't resulted, I don't think, in a huge win quite yet. But a buddy of mine, a guy named Spencer, co-wrote, I can't remember if he had a writing partner on it, wrote a movie that was essentially, it was kind of a triptych of stories. It was three interlocking stories. Each with kind of its own cast and it was a sort of, each one was kind of its own little contained narrative that at the end wound together nicely. All you found out kind of all came together. And what he did with this, he wrote it specifically, as so far as I know, for this purpose, which was Well, he didn't think he could get the funds to film the entire 100 pages or whatever it was. He thought he could get the funds to film one of those sections. And so what he did was he wrote it specifically so that 20 pages or 25 pages of this thing were totally self-contained. He went out, got the funds. I believe they shot that. Shot that section with the idea that now we have proof of concept. Now we can get the money to shoot the other two sections. And that, to me, I don't have my focus is almost entirely in writing and just sort of like living in my box. But hearing my buddy go through this was really inspiring to me. Like it was from sort of the foundation of it. Having this idea of I'll write this kind of script that we can pull out this one slice, film that slice, and then use that to get money for the rest was just so inventive. And I personally had never heard of something like that before. I'd heard of like short proof of concept films,
right?
Which I know you guys have done, but I'd never heard something quite like that. So I just I really love that. I hope I haven't talked to him in a little while. I hope he's getting that off the ground.
I love that. Both of those stories just showing gumption, just going out and doing it, even though you've got no safety net, no one backing you up, nothing that's going to catch you, if you fall, and you will, it's like everyone does, it's like, I love that. I love the gumption and the going and get it done.
That attitude is great.
Yeah.
It's the best.
Yeah.
You want to see people like that win, and not just win, but win hard and decisively, and just rise up and it's like, yes.
What was the Steve Martin quote again that we heard?
Be so good that they can't ignore you.
Yeah. So good that they can't ignore you. I mean, that's great. I mean, I feel like there's so many people who are where they are today in the industry because of that, because of that gumption, just going and making something that just blew people away.
Yeah.
Look at Robert Rodriguez, look at El Mariachi.
Yeah.
It's like just another great example.
Yeah.
There's so many of them out there. Well, Will, this has been awesome, man. It's been so good to catch up with you and hear about this awesome stuff you've been doing and the journey that you've had.
Yeah,
it's
and just
been great.
The inspiring words about writing and what can be done. And, I think the words are going to be helpful to a lot of people that don't know the industry as well, that want to, come in and express themselves and really share their visions and stories, and to know how they can go about doing it, and to know, the kind of work and effort they're going to need to put into it, so that they can really know that it's going to be a grind, but it can be very fulfilling too, though.
Where can people follow you, Will? Do you have social media? Do you have anywhere people can follow what you're doing?
No, I'm secretly 90 years old. I don't have any. I don't tweet or gram. I wish I did. I probably should.
That's okay, man. It's okay if you don't.
Go see Escape Room.
Go see Escape Room 2, guys. Go see Escape Room 2. We got to get out and see it. We love the first, and we got to go out and support. So we're gonna go see it very soon.
And then you've got Blood coming out next year.
Yeah, on the lookout for Blood. Yep.
And several others, I'm sure. Very excited about all that. And stay good. Stay nice, stay humble, stay as appreciative and as good of a person as we know you to be. And we appreciate this connection. We're looking forward to the time that we can say, hey, well, and we got this one together coming out.
Yeah, let's get together again when we've got our own movie in theaters.
Sounds good, guys. I appreciate the opportunity to come on and chat with you.
Yeah, likewise, dude. Okay. Thanks,
you,
guys, for joining
listening.
us. Yeah, thanks for joining us again on Unlikely Story. We will see you next time, and take care.